In recent developments that intertwine technology law and international relations, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has sparked significant debate following his recent Federal Register announcement. This announcement comes amid heightened scrutiny of the executive branch's authority and its implications on the Administrative Procedure Act (APA). The legal and constitutional ramifications of Rubio's actions raise questions that extend beyond the immediate political landscape. On March 14, 2025, Rubio's announcement attempted to redefine the foreign affairs function under the APA, a move that critics argue could lead to an unprecedented expansion of executive power. According to Patrick G. Eddington of the Cato Institute, who utilized Anthropic's Claude AI to analyze the announcement, the language used in Rubio's declaration suggests a broad interpretation that could encompass nearly all border control, immigration, customs, and trade activities as foreign affairs. Eddington's analysis underscores the potential constitutional issues such an expansion poses, particularly regarding separation of powers. The announcement seeks to remove a vast array of government actions from APA procedural safeguards, Eddington noted, highlighting how this could undermine established checks on executive authority. He elaborated that the primary responsibility for border control and immigration enforcement is statutorily assigned to the Department of Homeland Security (DHS) and the Department of Justice (DOJ), thus complicating Rubio's assertion of authority over these matters. Historical legal precedents indicate that courts have interpreted the foreign affairs function exception narrowly, requiring direct involvement with foreign nations or diplomatic activities. Eddington referenced cases such as Zhang v. Slattery and City of New York v. Permanent Mission of India, where courts have upheld this stringent interpretation. Consequently, he posits that Rubio's announcement, if challenged, would likely face judicial rejection based on its broadness and inconsistency with precedent. Furthermore, the implications of this announcement extend beyond the legal realm into the political arena, where it may provoke responses from both Congress and the judiciary. As federal agencies and lawmakers assess the ramifications of Rubio's sweeping claims, the potential for a constitutional showdown looms large. The current political climate, marked by increasing partisan divides and scrutiny of executive power, may further complicate this situation, leading to significant legislative and judicial examination. As the situation unfolds, observations from experts like Eddington suggest that this is not merely a legal issue but a broader reflection of the ongoing struggle over the balance of power in the U.S. government. The outcomes of this discourse may set important precedents for future executive actions and could reshape the landscape of American governance. In conclusion, the announcement by Secretary Rubio serves as a critical touchpoint in the ongoing dialogue about the limits of executive authority and the role of technology in informing legal interpretations. As stakeholders from various sectors respond, the future of this debate could lead to significant changes in how foreign affairs and domestic governance intersect, highlighting the necessity for vigilance in maintaining constitutional checks and balances. The coming weeks will likely reveal how this contentious issue will evolve, potentially reshaping the contours of power within the U.S. government. In a rapidly evolving Pentagon, the tenure of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is stirring significant controversy and concern. Since taking office, Hegseth, a former Fox News host, has faced a series of challenges that have raised alarms within military circles and beyond. From his unconventional hiring practices to his abrupt policy shifts, the consequences of his leadership style are beginning to reverberate throughout the armed forces. Hegseth's confirmation was marred by protests and backlash, particularly from military families who took issue with his past comments and affiliations. His early days at the Pentagon saw him make several missteps, including bringing a right-wing influencer on an official trip, which drew criticism even from fellow Republicans. However, the situation has not improved as he settles into his role. Instead, his decisions such as halting offensive cyber operations against Russia and dismantling the Office of Net Assessment have escalated tensions. The shuttering of the Office of Net Assessment, which had been a think tank for over 50 years, is particularly striking. This office was instrumental in strategizing future military engagements, including analyses of potential conflicts with adversaries like China. Critics argue that dismantling this office sends a troubling message about the Pentagon's commitment to long-term strategic planning. "We're in a period that looks a lot like the Cold War, and we're doing away with an office that for decades helped senior leaders navigate that conflict," remarked Thomas G. Mencken, a former Pentagon strategist. Hegseth's controversial approach to leadership has also included firing key legal officials from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. This move was met with significant backlash, culminating in a scathing op-ed by Frank Kendall, the former Secretary of the Air Force, who lamented that the administration is waging a war against the rule of law. In a direct response to this upheaval, Hegseth has appointed his personal lawyer Timothy Parlatore to a commander position in the Judge Advocate General's Corps. Parlatore is known for representing clients accused of serious military misconduct, raising concerns about the precedent this sets for legal accountability within the armed forces. The ramifications of Hegseth's decisions extend into the very fabric of military culture. He has initiated a sweeping review of the military's physical fitness and grooming standards with the explicit aim of making the armed forces less accommodating and more stringent. His rhetoric, which includes statements like "our troops will be fit, not fat," suggests a shift towards a more rigid environment that could alienate service members, particularly those from diverse backgrounds who have benefited from recent changes aimed at inclusivity. Moreover, the Defense Secretary's past comments regarding the Geneva Conventions and military conduct have raised ethical concerns. In his writings, Hegseth has suggested that U.S. forces should disregard international human rights treaties, framing the military's legal framework as restrictive. This perspective not only undermines the military's legal obligations but also threatens to reshape the moral compass of U.S. military operations. As Hegseth continues to reshape the Defense Department, his leadership style and decisions are likely to provoke ongoing debate within military and political spheres. The fallout from his early actions poses significant questions about the future direction of U.S. military policy and its adherence to legal and ethical standards. In conclusion, as Pete Hegseth's tenure unfolds, the implications of his leadership are becoming increasingly evident. The Pentagon stands at a crossroads, facing internal upheaval and external scrutiny. The coming weeks and months will be crucial as Hegseth implements his vision and as military leaders, lawmakers, and the public respond to a rapidly changing landscape. The balance between maintaining effective military readiness and upholding the rule of law will be tested, and the outcomes could have lasting effects on the U.S. Armed Forces and their global standing. In a significant move that could reshape food safety regulations in the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., recently appointed Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services (HHS), has instructed the Food and Drug Administration (FDA) to explore the possibility of eliminating the generally recognized as safe grow rule for food ingredients. This directive, issued on March 10, has drawn considerable attention from both advocates for food safety and industry stakeholders who view the GRAW process as a critical mechanism for product innovation. The GRAW rule, established in 1972, allows food manufacturers to self-affirm the safety of ingredients without formal oversight from the FDA, provided those substances are generally recognized as safe based on a history of consumption. Currently, while the FDA encourages companies to submit notifications regarding their GRAW determinations, many manufacturers introduce new ingredients into the food supply with little to no oversight. According to Kennedy, this practice has led to the introduction of potentially unsafe substances into the market. For far too long, ingredient manufacturers and sponsors have exploited a loophole that has allowed new ingredients and chemicals, often with unknown safety data, to be introduced into the U.S. food supply without notification to the FDA or the public, he stated. Kennedy's directive to eliminate the GRAW loophole aims to enhance transparency for consumers and ensure that food ingredients are thoroughly evaluated for safety. This initiative aligns with growing concerns over food safety, particularly following incidents like the liver injuries linked to taro flour, which was allowed into the food supply under the GRAW determination. The tide of public dissatisfaction has spurred state-level legislative actions such as the California Food Safety Act, which prohibits certain toxic additives, and similar bills are surfacing in other states including West Virginia. However, the FDA's ability to enforce stricter oversight may be hindered by ongoing resource constraints. Prior to Kennedy's confirmation, there were efforts within the FDA to develop a more formal review process for food ingredients already in the supply chain. Yet, the departure of key personnel and budgetary restrictions following the recent change in administration have raised concerns among public health advocates. A coalition of 15 organizations has voiced that an under-resourced FDA would jeopardize Kennedy's commitment to improving public health standards. Kennedy's actions in the realm of food safety come amid a broader context of his controversial positions on vaccines and public health. In his first month as Secretary, Kennedy has faced criticism for advocating positions that contradict established scientific consensus on vaccine safety. His mixed messages regarding vaccines have raised alarms among public health experts, leading to canceled advisory meetings and a potential erosion of trust in vaccination programs. With vaccine-preventable diseases making a resurgence in the U.S., medical professionals stress that clear and coordinated public health messaging is essential to combat misinformation and encourage vaccination. As Kennedy continues to navigate his dual focus on food safety and public health, the ramifications of his policies will be closely scrutinized. His administration's approach to eliminating the GRA loophole could usher in a new era of food safety oversight, but it remains to be seen whether the FDA will be equipped to implement these changes effectively. With both challenges and opportunities lying ahead, the future of America's food safety landscape will depend on the balance between innovation, regulation, and public trust in health authorities. In a significant development within the United States government, Attorney General Pam Bondi has received an extended deadline to report back to President Donald Trump regarding the potential repeal of gun control policies established during the Biden administration. Originally due on March 9. The new deadline is now set for March 16, according to a Department of Justice official. This extension comes amidst growing scrutiny and differing opinions on the administration's approach to gun rights and public safety. President Trump's executive order signed on February 7 mandated Bondi to review all executive actions from the Biden era that could infringe upon the Second Amendment rights of Americans. The move aligns with Trump's commitment to uphold gun rights, a promise he made during his campaign, particularly to influential gun advocacy groups like the National Rifle Association (NRA). The executive order emphasizes that the right to bear arms is fundamental to the protection of liberty, stating, "The Second Amendment is an indispensable safeguard of security and liberty." As the deadline loomed, Democratic leaders, including Representatives Jamie Raskin and Lucy McBath, urged Bondi in a letter to conduct her review objectively. They argued that the policies enacted under Biden were not only consistent with the Second Amendment but essential for curbing gun violence, a sentiment echoed by a Pew Research Center poll indicating that a majority of Americans favor stricter gun laws. Raskin and McBath pointed out that only a minuscule fraction of gun dealers had license revocations under the Biden administration's enhanced regulatory enforcement policy, suggesting that the measures did not unduly restrict lawful gun ownership. Bondi's task involves analyzing a range of policies, including the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives (ATF) zero-tolerance policy toward gun dealers who violate federal law. Critics argue that any rollback of these measures could endanger public safety, especially in light of recent mass shootings that have reignited the national debate over gun control. In addition to the gun control review, Bondi is also facing challenges related to a rise in vandalism targeting Tesla vehicles and dealerships, an issue she characterized as part of a broader trend of political unrest. Bondi announced a full investigation into these incidents, fueling discussions about the intersection of corporate interests and political affiliations, particularly in relation to Elon Musk's ties with the Trump administration. The political landscape surrounding Bondi's actions is complex, as evidenced by her confirmation hearing earlier this year, where she faced intense scrutiny from Democratic senators about her independence from Trump. Bondi's responses suggested a commitment to depoliticizing the Justice Department. Yet her subsequent actions have raised concerns among legal experts about the potential for politicization within the agency. As the deadline for Bondi's report approaches, the implications of her findings could reverberate through the ongoing national conversation about gun rights and public safety. With a substantial portion of the American population supporting stricter gun laws, any changes to existing regulations will likely provoke robust public and political reactions. The outcome of Bondi's review may set the tone for future legislative action and enforcement strategies surrounding gun control in the United States. The situation remains fluid, with stakeholders on both sides of the debate keenly awaiting the results of her investigation. As the U.S. economy navigates complex challenges, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently emphasized a long-term vision amidst a backdrop of market volatility. In a series of interviews, Bessent sought to reassure stakeholders that although the economy is undergoing a detox, this does not necessarily foreshadow a recession. His comments come as the stock market grapples with uncertainty following President Trump's aggressive tariff policies, which have contributed to significant losses in major indexes. In his remarks on CNBC, Bessent stated, "I'm not concerned about a little bit of volatility over 3 weeks," indicating that the administration is focused on broader economic fundamentals rather than short-term fluctuations. He reiterated that the economy is in a transitional phase, which he referred to as a detox. When pressed on whether this transition implied an impending recession, Bessent clarified, "Not at all. It doesn't have to be. Our goal is to have a smooth transition." Despite Bessent's optimism, consumer sentiment appears to be waning. A recent survey from the University of Michigan revealed an 11% drop in consumer confidence this month, marking the third consecutive month of decline and reflecting a 22% decrease since December 2024. Such changes in sentiment often serve as a barometer for economic health, raising concerns about potential consumer spending slowdowns. Economists are divided on the implications of Trump's tariff strategies. While some experts like Bill Adams, chief economist at Comerica Bank, express concern that the ongoing tariff disputes could lead to higher inflation, others fear a stagnation of economic growth, a scenario described as stagflation. Analysts from Evercore highlighted that prolonged tariffs could undermine economic expansion, a sentiment echoed by J.P. Morgan economists who foresee a dual threat of rising inflation coupled with slower growth. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers weighed in, stating that the odds of a recession could be as high as 50%, attributing this risk to the on-again, off-again nature of Trump's tariffs. This sentiment resonates with financial markets, where the S&P 500 recently lost approximately $5 trillion in value over a brief period, entering correction territory. As of March 14, 2025, the index was down 8.17% for the month, with the Dow and Nasdaq experiencing similar declines. While Bessent and other administration officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, maintain a cautious optimism about the economy's fundamentals, the uncertainty surrounding fiscal policies is evident. Vance noted, "You can never predict the future, but I think the fundamentals of the economy are quite strong right now." This sentiment mirrors Trump's assertion that the nation is in a period of transition, a term he has used to describe the economic landscape amid ongoing tariff negotiations. As the administration seeks to navigate these turbulent waters, the economic outlook remains murky. Investors are left to decipher a complex economic agenda that appears disjointed, particularly in light of Trump's insistence on maintaining a strong dollar policy while simultaneously hinting at potential currency adjustments. The lack of clarity in economic strategy may erode confidence, further complicating efforts to stimulate long-term growth. Looking ahead, the administration's ability to articulate a coherent economic vision will be crucial. While Bessent's reassurances aim to bolster confidence, the reality of market conditions and consumer sentiment paints a more complicated picture. As the U.S. approaches critical economic thresholds, all eyes will be on how policy decisions unfold and their implications for both domestic and global markets. The coming months will likely reveal whether the current economic detox leads to a renewed stability or deeper challenges for the American economy. In a pointed critique of Canada's recent tariff measures, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick labeled the nation's response to American tariffs on steel and aluminum as tone-deaf. The remarks come in the wake of Canada imposing reciprocal tariffs that affect approximately $15.6 billion worth of U.S. steel and aluminum, as well as an additional $14.2 billion in tariffs targeting a range of imported goods including tools, computers, and sports equipment. During a meeting with Canadian officials including Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Lutnick expressed frustration over Canada's decision to retaliate against U.S. tariffs. He emphasized the need for a more constructive approach, stating, "We put a tariff on steel and aluminum to make sure the dumping countries of the world stop and we can build up our steel and aluminum in America." And what does Canada do? They put a tariff on sports equipment. I mean, really? This is just tone deaf. The tensions between the two nations have escalated, with Lutnick arguing that the broad 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum are essential for U.S. national security, highlighting that domestic production is crucial for manufacturing military equipment. He further criticized Canada for its perceived reliance on U.S. military protection while contributing significantly less to NATO, pointing out that Canada's military expenditure is only about 1.37% of its GDP compared to the United States' 3.38%. In contrast to Canada's aggressive stance, Lutnick praised the responses of the United Kingdom and Mexico, which have largely refrained from retaliatory tariffs. He remarked, "The British didn't respond, the Mexicans didn't respond. You have some countries that actually thoughtfully examine how they do business with us. And then you have people like the Canadians who are in elections." This juxtaposition underscores the complexities of international trade relations and the political dynamics influencing them. The Canadian government has condemned the U.S. tariffs as unjustifiably imposed, and Ontario Premier Ford has previously threatened to sever energy supplies to the U.S., a move that could impact over 1 million American homes and businesses relying on Canadian energy imports. However, following his meeting with Lutnick, Ford noted a reduction in hostilities, stating that he felt the temperature had come down between the two countries, even as both sides maintained their respective tariffs. Lutnick's remarks and the ongoing trade tensions point to a broader narrative regarding the future of U.S.-Canada relations. As political pressures mount in both countries ahead of upcoming elections, the potential for further escalation or a thawing of relations remains uncertain. The outcome of future negotiations will likely hinge on the ability of both nations to navigate their economic interdependencies while addressing domestic political concerns.